That sound could mean a lot of things. And when something's going wrong at home, the hardest part can be figuring out what the problem actually is. At Thumbtack, you can upload a voice message or a photo, and our AI-powered search will help diagnose your project. Plus, the pros we know have over 14 million 5-star reviews, so you can hire with confidence. Thumbtack, we know homes. Hire the right pro today.
Podcast with me, Darren Rees, and welcome to another brand new episode, an episode on a player who's been making some serious headlines and has become one of the most expensive players of all time. He's a young man with a bright future ahead of him. From the Ivory Coast at just 19 years old, he's been snapped up by Real Madrid for approximately €125 million, and he's being spoken about as a future superstar of the game. So, in this episode, we're going to be speaking about no other than Yan Diomandé. Before we get into this episode on Yan Diomandé, for those of you who are Football for Kids Plus members, I hope you really enjoyed the episode which came out on Monday on Gianluigi Donnarumma versus Thibaut Courtois. I wonder if you've picked who would be in your squad. If you haven't listened to that one yet and you're not a Football for Kids Plus member, then adults, all the information is in the description of this episode and all of the others. Right, it's time to do a quick couple of shout-outs before we get into this story on an ex-teenage superstar who's taking over the beautiful game of football, Yan Diomandé. The first one says, "Hi Darren, we all loved every World Cup episode and we've been re-listening. Could you do a huge shout out to Rafi and Franklin who are 8 and 6? They're massive Spurs fans with Sunderland coming in close second, and of course their beloved Bournemouth, which they have season tickets for. Keep up the good work and looking forward to all your new episodes." That one is from Stephanie. Well, hello Rafi and Franklin, who are 8 and 6 and are Bournemouth fans. Thank you so much for being listeners of the show. I really appreciate you listening to all the episodes so much that you're re-listening to ones that you've already listened to. And up the Bournemouth. I remember they did quite well in the FA Cup a couple of years ago, didn't they? And the last one before we get going with this episode says, "Hi Darren, my sons Ellis, who's 9, and Owen, who's 6, listen to your podcast whenever we are travelling in the car together. We are from and support the mighty Portsmouth, and I, Mark, have been a season ticket holder for 20 years. We would love a shout out and or to appear on Kids vs Adults." And that is from Mark Treby. So, a massive shout out to Ellis, to Owen and to Mark, the Pompey fans, and as you know, I am a Portsmouth fan myself. Thank you guys so much for being listeners as well, and let's hope us, the mighty Blues at Portsmouth at Fratton Park, have a wonderful season. Right then, Yan Diomandé, the teenage superstar who is catching the attention of the footballing world. Before the giant stadiums, the bright lights and professional football, Yan Diomandé's life began in the Ivory Coast, where he was born in November 2006. My goodness, that makes me feel old. And this was not a childhood filled with perfect green pitches and shiny new football boots. Oh no. Yan has explained that his family did not have much money at all. There was not much space at home. His father had gone to France, and eventually Yan made the enormous decision to leave his family and go away to pursue a football career. Back home, he remembered pitches baked by the sun until they looked rather yellow more than they looked green. And this was a place where children played in sandals because proper football boots cost money and not many people had much money. Then, a man called Bamba came along, who looked after players at his academy. He was the man who brought Yan his first proper set of football boots. Just imagine that. Before anybody was talking about Yan Diomandé as a future star, owning a pair of football boots was just a dream. And perhaps there is something even more important in the story than the boots themselves. Bamba saw a young boy who loved football, and he knew that his family simply couldn't just go and buy a pair of football boots. They didn't have the money for it. So he got him what he needed. And one small act of kindness can sometimes travel an awfully long way. And I guess, if we can, we all need to be a little bit more like Bamba. At just 9 years old, Yan Diomandé left home to join a club called Inter Foot Sud Comoé. It was an academy near the border with Ghana. 9 years old, away from his family, chasing his footballing dream. And Yan has revealed just how difficult life there could become. He remembered being so hungry that he and the other boys sometimes went into a nearby village and stole potatoes. Stealing was wrong, and it always will be wrong, of course. But imagine how hungry a child must be before a potato starts to feel like a treasure. Yan says that boiled potatoes with oil still reminds him of those days. Now, back home, there was somebody who refused to give up on him. She was never giving up on him. She was his biggest fan. His little sister, Roxanne. While other people may have laughed at Yan's enormous dreams and everybody wants to be a professional footballer, Roxanne told people that her brother could become the next Cristiano Ronaldo. And never underestimate what that bit means. Sometimes, just one person saying, "I believe in you," can help somebody keep walking when the road gets incredibly difficult. Then, at just 15 years old, Yan Diomandé travelled thousands of miles from the Ivory Coast to Florida in the United States of America. His family stayed behind. Yan arrived speaking French and virtually no English, and he has since admitted how difficult it was to be so far away from home and away from his family and friends. They were all he knew. In 2022, he joined somewhere called the DME Academy in Daytona Beach, where football suddenly became a new language entirely. And before long, people were really noticing him. Yan progressed in senior football with a team called AS Frenzi. They were in the United Premier Soccer League. He was playing against grown men while he was still just a teenager. In 2023, Frenzi reached the national finals. Yan scored once in normal time, and then in the 115th minute, he curled in the winner, and his team won 2-1. Yan Diomandé had scored both of their goals. But there is something about the triumph I like even more. Yan was attracting interest elsewhere, and had opportunities to go on trial to bigger and better clubs. But the people who worked with him remember fondly how he was so determined to finish the season with his Frenzy teammates and try to win the championship alongside them. And perhaps that's a bit of a lesson to remember as well. Sometimes ambition means chasing the next opportunity, but sometimes character means remembering the people already running beside you. Yan stayed for the fight, and together they became champions. He could sleep at night very peacefully. And then came something almost every footballer experiences eventually. It's pretty rare that they don't, and that is rejection. Yan Diomandé, who has become one of the most expensive footballers in the history of the beautiful game, was taken around Europe for trials. He went for trials at Bournemouth on the south coast of England. Then he went to West London and had a trial at Chelsea. Then he went to Glasgow and had a trial with Rangers, then to Olympiacos, then to Crystal Palace. Different clubs, different training grounds, but the same ending over and over again. None of those trials resulted in Yan Diomandé being signed. Even opportunities with teams in Major League Soccer failed to produce a professional contract. And perhaps the hardest part is that Diomandé said that nobody explained anything to him properly. Can you imagine the feeling? You've travelled thousands of miles. You believe that you're good enough. You keep getting another chance to prove yourself, but the door keeps getting slammed in your face. Then his American visa expired. He had to return back home to the Ivory Coast. And check this, he later wrote that he and his little sister Roxanne cried together because they thought his football dream may well be over. But remember what Roxanne was like. She told everybody that her brother was going to do it. She was the one who believed in him when other people laughed. She still believed, and that mattered, because having one person that believes in you can take you a long way. Rejection can tell you that one opportunity has ended, and it's a good job that his sister believed in him, because a few weeks later, another door was about to open. This time, it would be in Spain. And then finally, yes. Only weeks after Yan cried because he thought the dream may well be over, Yan Diomandé signed for CD Leganés in Spain. He initially played for their reserves team, but it did not take long for the first team to notice him. On the 29th of March 2025, at just age 18 years old, Yan Diomandé was sent out onto the pitch for his La Liga debut. And of all the possible places for him to make his La Liga debut, yep, it was a Santiago Bernabeu against Real Madrid. A boy who had once wondered whether professional football would ever happen was suddenly running alongside some of the most famous players in the world on one of the most famous pitches in the world. His side eventually lost 3-2, but Yan Diomandé had arrived in La Liga, but his story was about to become very, very sad. A few weeks later, Yan received a call from home telling him that his little sister had died. She was only 15 years old. The sister who defended his dream. The sister who believed when others laughed. The sister who kept telling him how good he could become. Yan later wrote a beautiful letter to Roxanne and explained that everything he now does on a football pitch is for her. And unfortunately, there isn't a neat little football lesson that can make losing somebody you love feel okay. There isn't supposed to be either. But there is something beautiful about remembering the people who believed in you, carrying their love with you, and making sure that they are never ever forgotten. Yan made Roxanne a promise. The world would know her name. And now, just think about how quickly football can change. Only months earlier, Yan Diomandé had been hearing no, no, no. Then, in July 2025, RB Leipzig came calling. They signed the 18-year-old from the Spanish top division with a deal reported at around 20 million euros. Suddenly, the teenager who had struggled to find somebody willing to give him a professional contract was heading to the Bundesliga. And his first competitive match could barely have started any better. It was in the German Super Cup. Leipzig fell behind after 3 minutes. So what did Yan Diomandé do? He scored. 6 minutes into his competitive Leipzig career, the ball was already in the net. Leipzig eventually won 4-2. But then came the reminder, reaching the top does not mean everything suddenly becomes easy. His Bundesliga debut arrived away at Bayern Munich and his team was smashed 6-0. Yan Diomandé was substituted at half-time, but let me tell you this, just remember that score, 6-0. Against Frankfurt in December, he scored a hat-trick, all 3 goals coming within 18 minutes. At just 19 years old and 22 days to be precise, he became the second youngest player ever to score a Bundesliga hat-trick. And by the end of his first Bundesliga season, 33 matches and 12 goals had gone in, as well as 8 assists. Bundesliga Rookie of the Season he was awarded. He was rejected, sent home, given another chance, beaten 6-0, then months later scored a hat-trick in a 6-0 victory. And while Yan Diomandé was exploding onto the scene in Germany, something else enormous was happening. His country was calling for him. On the 10th of October 2025, Yan made his senior debut for the Ivory Coast against the Seychelles in a World Cup qualifier. And what did the 18-year-old do in his international debut? Yep, you said it, didn't you? He scored. The Ivory Coast won 7-0. 4 days later, they faced Kenya, knowing victory would send them to the World Cup. Diomandé scored again, and the Ivory Coast won 3-0 and booked their tickets to North America for the 2026 FIFA World Cup. His first 2 senior internationals ended with 2 goals. World Cup qualification was secured, and then came the summer of 2026. The boy who had once played football without proper boots in the Ivory Coast was now walking onto football's biggest stage of the FIFA World Cup. In the Ivory Coast's opening match against Ecuador, they won 1-0. Against Germany, he burst down the wing and sent in the cross, which helped his teammates score in a dramatic game which they ended up losing 2-1. Then, against Curaçao, Yan Diomandé pounced on a defensive mistake and squared the ball for his teammate Nicolas Pepe. The Ivory Coast won 2-0, and for the first time in their history, they reached the knockout stage of a World Cup tournament. Their adventure finally ended against Norway. It was in the round of 32. The Ivory Coast fought back from behind, but Erling Haaland scored in the 86th minute to win the game 2-1 for his country. And now we arrive at today, in August. Remember the boy he was rejected trial after trial? On the 6th of August 2026, the world's biggest club, Real Madrid, announced that they had signed Yan Diomandé. It was a 7-year contract running until 2033. Real Madrid did not officially reveal the transfer fee, but major reports put the potential cost at around £115 million or 120 million euros, making Yan Diomandé the most expensive signing in Real Madrid's history and the most expensive African footballer ever. Just think about the two ends of that very same story. A child at the beginning, growing up without much money, playing footballs in sandals, and years later, Real Madrid spending more than £100 million to sign him. And he's only 19 years old. Yan Diomandé has been given the number 25 shirt, joining a dressing room containing players such as Kylian Mbappe, Vinicius Jr. and Jude Bellingham. When Yan spoke to Real Madrid TV after arriving, he talked about how proud and happy he felt, and said that one of the things he wanted most was to make his family proud. And then, on the 16th of August 2026, another dream became real. Yan pulled on that famous white shirt and played his first minutes for Real Madrid, coming on in a friendly which they went on to win 3-0. And perhaps that is something worth remembering. Success can bring money, fame and enormous numbers beside your name. But none of those things tell you who somebody is. For Yan Diomandé, after everything his family sacrificed and everything Roxanne believed he could become, making the people he loved proud mattered the most. From the Ivory Coast to America, to plenty of rejection, to Spain, to Germany, and now, somehow, to Real Madrid. But there is still one final question. After everything Yan Diomandé has already lived through, where on earth does his story go next? I guess we're just gonna have to wait and see. And that brings this episode on Yan Diomandé to an end. So remember, if you know someone who loves football just as much as you do, then please tell them about the Football for Kids podcast. And whether you're playing football soon, watching it on the telly or pitchside, I hope that you enjoy the game. See you next time. Oh, and if you're listening on Football for Kids Plus, of course, you get the end of episode quiz. So get ready for question number 1.